The day had been like any other, uneventful, quiet, almost boring. I was lounging on my couch in a pair of old sweatpants, half watching a rerun of a show I didn't even like. The kind of mindless background noise you keep on just so the silence doesn't feel too loud. My phone buzzed beside me. I almost didn't check it. It was probably a notification from some app I'd forgotten to delete, but something made me reach for it. It was a message. Just one. Short. Sent through a number I hadn't saved, but it looked oddly familiar. "We're all going to miss you, man. The funeral is live now." At first, I blinked and stared at the screen. I actually chuckled. Maybe it was some sort of spam message or a prank. People send weird stuff all the time. But then I looked again. The contact photo wasn't there, but the number, it started to seem familiar. I scrolled back in, my mind trying to place it, and then it clicked. It was Sam's number. Sam, my college roommate. We hadn't talked in years, not since he moved abroad. There was no reason for him to send me something like this, especially something so strange. I sat up straighter, the laziness of the afternoon suddenly gone. I stared at the message again. It wasn't funny. There was a link attached, some generic-looking Livestream URL. Against my better judgment, I clicked it. The video loaded slowly, a spinning wheel in the center. My heart was tapping in my chest now, faster than it had any reason to. The screen finally faded into view, and what I saw made my blood run cold. It was a funeral, a real one. People sat in rows of wooden pews. The camera was stationary, placed somewhere near the front. At the center of the screen was a closed casket, polished, dark brown with silver handles. Floral arrangements surrounded it. Candles flickered gently on either side. The setting was eerily familiar. I squinted. The church. I recognized it. It was the old cathedral near my hometown, the same one my parents dragged me to on Christmas Eve every year. I hadn't seen the inside of it in over a decade, and yet here it was, on my phone, streaming live. Still, I tried to rationalize. Maybe this was just some bizarre coincidence. A glitch. A link sent to the wrong number. That's when the chat caught my eye. People were commenting, "Fast! Rest easy, Alex. Can't believe you're really gone." He was one of the good ones. Gone too soon, man. I kept reading. My name appeared again and again. Alex Moore. That was me. I stared at the comments, my pulse thudding in my ears. I looked back at the video. The room was filled with people, faces I recognized, my ex-girlfriend, my high school math teacher, a guy I hadn't spoken to since freshman year of college. They were all there. Some were wiping away tears. Some were just sitting still, eyes glassy and distant. Every single one of them believed I was dead. I whispered my own name under my breath, just to hear it. Just to remind myself that I was real, that I was here, alive. I was watching a live stream of my own funeral. I felt dizzy. My hands began to tremble. I turned the volume up on the video, and that's when I heard it. The soft hum of a hymn being sung, one my grandmother used to play, on the piano. It made my stomach twist. This wasn't just a mistake. This was personal. This was real. I checked the timestamp on the live stream. It was live. Happening now. I opened my phone's camera and looked at myself. I was pale, confused, breathing heavily, but alive. I scrolled up again to the message Sam had sent. No follow-up, just that one line. Like a goodbye. Like he truly believed I was gone. I tapped on the number, ready to call him, but something inside me hesitated. If he answered, what would I say? What if he didn't answer at all? Or worse, what if someone else did? I couldn't tear my eyes away from the screen. The funeral kept streaming, the camera fixed on that single frame, rows of mourners, a closed casket, and a room filled with soft music and heavier silence. The atmosphere oozed grief, and yet it all felt detached, like I was watching a movie about someone else's death, someone I didn't know. But then a woman stepped into frame, and my stomach twisted. It was Claire, my ex. She looked thinner than I remembered, but her walk was the same. Shoulders pulled back, chin slightly up, trying to stay composed. Her eyes were red, swollen, like she'd been crying for hours. She clutched a small piece of paper in one hand, the other nervously brushing back strands of hair that didn't need fixing. I hadn't spoken to her in years. We didn't part on bad terms, but we never kept in touch. And now here she was, standing at a podium, preparing to speak at what was supposedly my funeral. She took a shaky breath and looked out over the crowd. "I wasn't sure if I should say anything," she said, voice soft, trembling. But I couldn't. Just sit there and let him go without saying goodbye. I froze. She was talking about me, like I was gone, like I'd vanished from the earth. "I remember the first time Alex made me laugh," she continued. "It was this stupid joke. I don't even remember the punchline, but it came at a moment when I really needed it. That's the thing about him. He always knew how to make people feel seen, heard, like they mattered." Someone in the front row nodded slowly. An older man. I couldn't tell if it was a teacher, a family friend, or a co-worker. But he looked devastated. I scanned the room again. The faces were all familiar, people from my life. People I hadn't thought about in years. A guy I used to play soccer with in high school. My neighbour from 3 apartments ago. Even Mrs. Keller, the old librarian who used to let me borrow books longer than allowed. They were all here. Everywhere I looked, there were fragments of my past sitting in mourning. Another person stood up, a younger woman I recognized from a temp job I held 3 years ago. She started speaking, recalling a memory of us sharing coffee during a night shift. She smiled sadly as she told the story, and then her eyes welled up. "This world didn't deserve someone like Alex," she said. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It was as if my entire life had been condensed into a collection of final words. And I was the only one who didn't know it had ended. A slideshow began playing in the background. Photos of me flickered onto a projector screen. Childhood birthdays, awkward teen phases, graduation, group trips, solo selfies. Some of these photos I had no idea anyone even had. One was taken last year. I recognized the hoodie I'd only recently thrown away. Who had been taking these pictures? And more importantly, how did they get them? The chat on the livestream continued to move. Wish I could have told him how much he meant to me. Still in shock. Just saw him last month. Can't stop crying. Life's too short, man. Tell your friends you love them. It felt like I was being erased in real time, reduced to memories and filtered through. Grief I hadn't even earned. I was here, breathing, watching, and no one could see me. They were all caught in a reality that had already accepted my absence. A man stepped up next. I didn't recognize him at first. Then I realized it was my old boss from my second job. He spoke about how I never missed a deadline, always stayed late, always smiled even when others complained. He called me one of the most dependable people he'd ever worked with. They had all gathered to say goodbye, and not a single one of them knew they were wrong. I kept staring at the live stream, unable to process what I was seeing. Every face, every word spoken, every photo displayed, it all screamed one impossible thing. I was dead, and the world had moved on without me. I felt like I was floating, above myself, like none of this could be real. My instincts kicked in. I needed confirmation. I needed to hear someone, anyone, tell me I was still here, still alive. I picked up my phone and called my mum. It rang once, then again, then went straight to voicemail. Her voice came on, calm and familiar. "Hi, you've reached Elizabeth Moore. Sorry I can't get to the phone. Leave a message and I'll get back to you." I hung up without saying anything. I tried my dad next. Same result, my sister. No answer. I called my best friend, Ethan. His phone rang longer, which gave me a weird sense of hope, like maybe he'd answer and everything would make sense again. He didn't. Straight to voicemail. I left a message this time, my voice shaking as I said, "Hey man, it's Alex. I don't know what's going on. Please call me back, please." I hung up and stared at my screen. My hands were sweating. I texted all of them. Short, frantic messages. "I'm alive. Please answer me. What's happening? I'm here. This is a mistake, right? Someone, say something." No replies. I open my group chats. Silence. No recent activity. A few messages from earlier in the week talking about funeral arrangements. I scrolled up. My name kept appearing. People reminiscing, sharing stories, organizing carpools, crying through texts. Not one person questioned whether I was really gone. They all just accepted it. Panic swelled in my chest. I checked my phone number. Same. Number I'd always had. My face in the mirror was still mine. I opened the camera again, just to be sure. My reflection stared back, confused and pale, but breathing. I hadn't hallucinated everything. I was still in my apartment. The TV was still on, playing the same rerun it had been earlier. My half-eaten slice of pizza sat on the table. Time hadn't jumped forward. Nothing had changed, except everything had. I opened Instagram. My feed had changed dramatically. Photo after photo of me, some old, some recent. Tributes, captions, crying emojis. Hashtags like RippleX and Gone Too Soon filled my screen. People I hadn't seen in years posted about how much I meant to them. A girl I barely remembered from high school wrote a long caption about how I once helped her with homework when no one else would. Someone from my first job posted a selfie we took after a staff party. The caption read, "You never really know. It's the last time." It was like my death had unlocked a flood of memories in people's minds. Memories I'd forgotten or never even noticed. Everyone had something to say now that I was gone. I left comments under a few posts. "I'm alive. This isn't real," but they vanished when I refreshed the page. It was like the app didn't recognize me anymore, like my presence online was dissolving in real time. I opened my banking app. It wouldn't let me in. Access denied. Account deactivated. My phone buzzed again. A new email notification. The subject line hit me like a punch to the chest. Death certificate. Alex R. Moore. It was sent to my email. My actual email. The one I'd been using for years. There was a PDF attached. I clicked it with trembling fingers. There it was. My name. My birth date. My address. The cause of death. Undisclosed. I didn't know what to think anymore. It wasn't just the funeral. It wasn't just social media. Something deeper was happening. Something I couldn't explain. I needed to get out. I needed to see someone, touch something real. I grabbed my jacket, slid on my shoes without socks, and flung the door open. I didn't even know where I was going. I just knew I had to move. I stepped out into the world, hoping the air would feel different, grounding, like a reset. I needed something solid to pull me out of this surreal nightmare. My phone was still in my hand, the screen dim now, but the echo of what I'd seen and read burned behind my eyes. Everyone thought I was dead. That wasn't a theory anymore. It was a fact, one they were grieving over. I headed straight to the nearest store, a small corner shop 2 blocks away. The streets felt emptier than usual, even though the weather was clear. Each sound, the rustle of leaves, the hum of distant traffic, felt detached, like I was hearing the world through thick glass. When I reached the shop, I pulled open the door and heard the chime above it ring. A small comfort. There was a man behind the counter, someone I vaguely recognized from past visits. I nodded at him. He didn't acknowledge me. "Hey," I said, walking up to the register. "Can I ask you something?" He was scrolling on his phone, not looking up. "I need to ask you a question," I repeated. "Nothing." I leaned closer. "Can you see me?" He finally glanced up, but his eyes passed over me like I was just another shadow in the room. No flicker of recognition, no sign he'd heard me. I backed away slowly, heart pounding harder. Something was wrong. This wasn't just people ignoring their phones or missing calls. I opened my social media again. More posts, more photos, a video clip of me at a party, laughing, clinking glasses with friends. The caption read, "Can't believe he's really gone." I refreshed the page and noticed something odd. My profile was gone. Completely. No profile picture, no posts, no comments. I searched my name. Nothing. Only tributes. I felt like a ghost scrolling through the living. My past still existed, but my present was being scrubbed away. I tried logging back in again, but it said the account didn't exist. I tried email recovery. No user found. In a last-ditch effort, I called my sister again. This time, I let it ring all the way through. She still didn't answer. Then, without thinking, I opened her Instagram page. The latest post was a picture of me when I was around 10 years old, blowing out birthday candles. The caption beneath it was simple: "I'll never stop missing you." I read it over and over, like repetition would make it untrue. I scrolled to the comments. My aunt, my cousins, a couple of people I didn't recognize. They were all there, talking about me in past tense. I couldn't stand it anymore. I needed to look someone in the eyes. I needed someone to say they saw me, that I was real. I started walking toward Ethan's apartment, hoping he'd be home, hoping he'd open the door, and this would all just collapse into some huge misunderstanding. But as I passed by the small park near his building, something caught my eye. Makeshift memorial. It was near the bench where we used to sit on lazy afternoons. Flowers, candles, hand-drawn signs with my name. There was even a framed photo of me from our trip to the mountains 3 years ago. A few candles had burned down, their wax clinging to the concrete like tiny ghosts. 2 people stood nearby, speaking in hushed voices. One of them was Ethan. He looked pale, withdrawn, his eyes red. I started walking faster, calling out to him. "Ethan!" I shouted. "Ethan, I'm here!" He didn't react. I got closer. "Look at me. It's me, man. It's Alex." Still nothing. I reached out, grabbed his shoulder. He flinched, barely, but then turned his head and looked past me, not through me, past me, like I wasn't even standing there. Desperate for answers, I decided to go to the police station. If the world had declared me dead, then surely there must be some official record explaining why. I thought maybe if I saw the documents with my own eyes, if I could speak to someone who understood the situation, I might finally grasp what was happening. I grabbed my keys and headed out, trying to calm the rising panic that clutched at my chest. At the station, the fluorescent lights flickered faintly overhead as I approached. The front desk, a tired-looking officer glanced up from his paperwork. I took a deep breath and explained as calmly as I could. "I'm here because I think there's been some kind of mistake. I've been told I'm dead, but I'm standing right here. I need to see any records related to my death." He frowned and reached for his computer. After typing in my name, his eyes widened slightly. "Alex Moore?" he asked, as if confirming the identity. "There is a death certificate filed under your name, yes. Cause of death is listed as undisclosed." I blinked. "Undisclosed? That's not possible. I'm right here." He gave me a look that didn't hide his skepticism. "Sir, if you're telling me you're alive, then there must be a mistake somewhere. Let me check further." Minutes dragged on, while he searched through records. Then he printed out a copy of the certificate and slid it across the counter toward me. My name was there, my date of birth, my address. The certificate was official looking, stamped and signed. I traced the edges with my fingers as if touching it might make it disappear. "What about any other records?" I asked, voice barely above a whisper. He hesitated, then pulled up an incident report. The details were vague, almost empty. But the date matched when the funeral livestream had started. No cause listed, no next of kin notified. Just an official acknowledgement of death. I pressed further. Is there a body? A hospital? A morgue? The officer shook his head. No record of a body recovered. No hospital records. This is unusual. I swallowed hard, feeling the walls close in. How could there be a death certificate with no body, no hospital report, no evidence that I was actually gone? And yet, here it was. Official, public, impossible to ignore. He looked at me seriously. You might want to consider hiring a lawyer or contacting a medical examiner to get this sorted out. I nodded, but I already knew I was in something far beyond normal legal channels. When I left the station, the weight of the certificate in my pocket felt like a cruel joke. It was proof of something I refused to accept, a document declaring my life was over. I went home, desperate to find any clue that could explain this nightmare. I searched through old files, text messages, emails. Nothing seemed out of place, yet the world had moved on without me. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from a number I didn't recognize. Stop looking. You don't belong here anymore. The words were chilling, sudden, and completely out of context. I stared at the screen, trembling. Who had sent that? Was it someone playing a sick joke, or was it a warning? I didn't know. But one thing was clear. Whatever was happening, it wasn't just a mistake or a prank. Something far darker was at play. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind was racing, trying to piece together a puzzle that made no sense. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw faces from the funeral livestream, heard the whispered condolences, felt the absence of the people who should have been there with me. I was alive, yet trapped in a world that insisted I was dead. The more I thought about it, the more I realized this wasn't just about paperwork or social media profiles. It felt like reality itself was bending around me. I decided to try one. Last thing, I needed proof. Not just documents or photos, but something undeniable. I grabbed my old camcorder from a dusty shelf in the closet, the one I hadn't used in years. I figured if I recorded myself talking, moving, breathing, I could show someone, anyone, that I was still here. Maybe then the nightmare would end. I set the camera on a tripod and pressed record. The red light blinked on. I looked straight into the lens, my hands shaking. "This is Alex Moore," I said, voice steady but filled with desperation. "I am alive. I am here. If anyone watches this, please believe me." I filmed myself walking around the apartment, opening drawers, flipping through old books, even watering a dying plant. I wanted to prove that I could still interact with the world, that I hadn't vanished into thin air. The more I recorded, the more real it felt, like I was reclaiming my own existence. After recording for nearly an hour, I uploaded the video to a new anonymous account I created online. I sent the link to every person I could think of, friends, family, even acquaintances who had posted about my death. I waited anxiously for a response. Hours passed with nothing. I refreshed my inbox over and over, hoping for a message, a comment, any sign that someone had seen the video and believed me. But the silence was deafening. The video views barely ticked up, and there were no comments. It was like I was invisible. I started to feel a deep, aching loneliness settle over me, not just the loneliness of being misunderstood, but the isolation of existing in a world that had erased me. I wasn't just dead on paper. I was dead in everyone's eyes. Then, just as I was about to give up, my phone buzzed with a new message from an unknown number. "Stop. Let it go. Your time here is over." My blood ran cold. I wanted to reply, to ask who they were, what they wanted, but my fingers froze. The message felt like a warning and a threat. Who was watching me? How much? Did they know? Was I being followed? Was this all some elaborate trap? I shut off my phone and sat in the dark, heart pounding. The night stretched endlessly before me. filled with shadows and questions that had no answers. I didn't know who I could trust anymore, or if anyone even wanted me to be alive. Sleep finally took me, but even in dreams, I was haunted by the image of my own funeral, the faces of the people who had mourned me while I was still breathing, the empty casket, the silent room. When morning came, I realized I had to keep fighting. I had to find out what had happened to me, why the world had marked me dead, and how I could reclaim my life. But somewhere deep inside, I feared that maybe, just maybe, the truth was something I wasn't ready to face.